The first time I heard the water, I thought it was just the pipes. Old buildings do that. They groan and whisper and knock around at odd hours, especially in a place like 6C at Linton Arms, a battered 3-story walk-up in a part of town where the past outnumbers the people. But this wasn't a knock or a hiss of old steam. It was dripping, a deliberate, wet plop every few seconds, like someone wringing out a soaked towel just out of view. It was just after midnight. I've been tossing on the couch, trying to ignore the heat and the tinnitus ring that never quite leaves my left ear. My bedroom still smelled like old paint, so I crashed on the sofa in the living room with a fan in my face. The noise started just as I was drifting off. Drip, drip, drip. I sat up confused. The sound was directly above me. That was the first red flag because I live on the top floor. There's nothing above my ceiling but crawl space and roof. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The sound continued, steadily, rhythmically, as I swept the light across the popcorn-textured ceiling. There were no wet spots, no stains, no sagging drywall, just nothing. Still, the sound persisted. Drip, drip, drip. I even pulled the couch away from the wall and stood on it, pressing my palm against the ceiling. Bone dry. The air didn't even feel humid. I told myself it had to be the building's plumbing. Maybe a pipe just ran oddly across the roof, or rain was caught in a clogged gutter. Except it wasn't raining. It hadn't rained for 2 weeks. And that's when the smell hit me. Just faintly, like pond water or something gone stale. Not mildew, not mold, still water. I tried to forget it. Went for a long walk through the park. Bought a breakfast sandwich and a coffee, and tried to convince myself I hadn't actually heard anything. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I dozed off before I thought I had. But I couldn't stop thinking about how specific the sound had been. So that night, I left my phone on the coffee table, set to record. If there was something going on, I'd catch it. The apartment was quiet when I went to bed around 10:30. But in the recording I played the next morning at exactly 12:11 a.m., the sound began. Clear as day. Drip, drip, drip. It went on for exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And then it stopped. But the worst part wasn't the dripping. It was the whisper that came right after the final drip. A low, dragging voice like gravel being pulled across wood. It said, "Ray, I didn't sleep the next night. I couldn't. I left all the lights on. Sat in the kitchen with the door open, staring at the living room ceiling from a distance. The apartment was so quiet I could hear the blood in my ears. When the sound returned, it didn't start softly. It slammed back into the room like a faucet turned all the way on. Drip, 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 drip. Too fast to count. And then it slowed like someone controlling it. Drip, drip, drip. I ran into the living room, stood directly beneath the sound, still dry. But this time I saw something. Just for a second before I blinked, a small dark circle on the ceiling, the size of a penny. Gone the moment I looked directly at it. I played the new recording the next morning. Again, the dripping began at 12:11 a.m. exactly. It built into a rapid burst, then faded. And this time, something new, another whisper. It sounded wrong, too close to my own voice. I don't remember it, but it remembers me. The voice echoed oddly, like it came from inside the microphone, not the room. Then silence. I called the building manager. Nick, a guy in his 60s who wears tank tops year-round and thinks duct tape is a valid solution to anything. I told him about the dripping. He said, could be heat expansion. Ceilings do that in older buildings. I asked if there were any water lines above me. Nah, roof's above you, man. Nothing but air and dust. I asked if anyone ever died in the unit. He laughed. What is this, Netflix? Nah, you're good. Just old plumbing sounds. Ghosts don't pay rent. I almost believed him, until I saw the second circle on the ceiling that night. Then a third, each one vanishing when I turned on a light. I started mapping the times and spots of the drops. I put a piece of butcher paper on the floor right below the sound. At 12:11 a.m., I heard it again. But this time, each drip landed directly onto the paper in the exact same place as the night before. But the paper was dry. When I examined it, I noticed faint indentations, like something impacted the paper, but without moisture. 5 spots, uniform spacing. I marked them with red ink. Next night, same exact pattern. A new line of 5 indentations. They weren't random. They were arranged. I started connecting the dots. The indentations resembled letters. I'm not talking alphabet letters, but runes. Symbols. I posted a picture on an anonymous paranormal forum. Within an hour, someone responded, "That's not random. That's a sigil. Old Nordic. It roughly translates to remembrance or what was drowned." I asked the user where they found it. They said they'd seen it in an old book about flood myths. Then their account disappeared. Deleted. That night, I filled a bowl with water and placed it under the spot where the drips hit. At 12:11 a.m., the sound began again. And I saw it. Ripples in the water. Something was displacing it without touching it. Each drip caused a tremor. And for a split second, I saw something reflected in the water. A face. Pale. Mouth open. Eyes missing. Gone when I blinked. The scent returned that night. Stronger. Rotten wood. Algae. Wet stone. Like a lake bed that hadn't been disturbed in years. I opened the window. The smell didn't go away. I left the apartment and came back 20 minutes later, still there. And then I saw it. The ceiling had changed. The paint was swelling outward in spots, like something underneath was trying to push through. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking. Hallucination. Water damage. Sleep deprivation. I thought the same. Until last night, when I played back the newest recording and heard 2 voices. One was mine. The other was Marcy's, my ex-wife, who hasn't spoken to me in 6 months. But there she was on the tape, whispering through the dripping, "Ray, why didn't you save me?" Marcy's alive. I saw her post on Facebook 2 days ago. So how is her voice in my apartment? When I woke up, the drip pattern had changed. No sound last night. Nothing at 12:11 a.m. Not even the faint ripple in the water bowl I'd left beneath the ceiling. I thought maybe it was over, until I saw the stain. A small, almost imperceptible gray blotch, the size of a nickel, had formed on the living room ceiling. Dry to the touch. No moisture. But when I pressed on it, I felt resistance, like something was pushing back. I blinked, stepped away, then looked again. The spot had moved, 2 feet to the left. I spent the day staring at the ceiling. My food went untouched. I didn't check my email or return my brother's call. I waited for the stain to move again, and it did. Every time I looked away for longer than a few minutes, it shifted position. First by inches, then feet. By nightfall, there were 3 stains, forming an arc, like a footprint pattern, not flat on the ceiling, as if someone had walked across the ceiling on all 4s, slowly, carefully, pausing every few steps. I placed my phone on the floor and recorded upward for hours. When I played it back, I heard faint scraping like claws dragging against plaster. Her name was Gloria, mid-50s, teaches art classes at the community college. She showed up at my door around 9 a.m., hair in a messy bun, eyes bloodshot. Hey, sorry to bother. Have you had plumbing issues? I've got water damage on my ceiling. Drips started last night. I blinked. She lives directly beneath me. I shook my head. No water up here. Nothing leaking. Well, something's dripping through my bedroom ceiling. It smells weird. Like dead things. I asked if I could see. She hesitated, then nodded. Her bedroom ceiling had a black stain, larger than a trash can lid, spreading outward from the center. And right in the middle, a slow drip. Oily, dark. The droplet didn't hit the floor. It vanished in midair about an inch before touching the ground. Gloria hadn't noticed that part yet, but I did. I ran my hand over the area of my apartment directly above her room. Bone dry. I opened every faucet. Nothing out of the ordinary. The water dripping into her ceiling wasn't coming from me. It wasn't coming from anywhere. Later that night, my apartment began to stink of wet earth again. This time it was stronger, raw, organic. I walked from room to room, sniffing walls, floors, vents. The smell concentrated in the hallway outside my bedroom. And that's when I saw the tiny pile of dirt, right in the center of the hallway floor. Loamy, damp, fresh. I bent to scoop it up, and it moved. A slow crawl like it was alive. Then it crumbled, turned to dust in my fingers. I stared at my palm. There was a tooth in it. The whispering returned on the tape from that night. But this time, two voices overlapped. One deep, rasping. The other high-pitched, urgent. Together they said, "We remember. We drowned. We're still here." I don't know why, but I burst into tears. Something in the cadence. The weight of it. It felt less like a haunting, more like a warning, or a confession. The ceiling cracked overnight. Fine, spidery lines like the surface of old glass fanned out from one of the moving spots. I tapped the drywall with a broom handle. It sounded hollow, different from the rest. I knocked again. This time, the ceiling knocked back. Once, a slow, echoing thud. I stood frozen for 10 minutes. And then I heard something I will never forget. A slow, deliberate breath from inside the ceiling. It was 87 degrees outside, but the apartment temperature dropped so suddenly that my breath became visible. I wrapped myself in 2 blankets and still shivered. All the while, the dripping returned. No longer in the living room. Now from the bathroom. When I opened the door, the mirror was fogged. The tub full of dirty water. Except I hadn't run the faucet. And when I plunged my hand into the water, it wasn't wet. It felt like memory. I pulled back and found a single long hair clinging to my wrist. It wasn't mine. I noticed a faint signature inside the bathroom cabinet. Black ink on the wood paneling. LW Remember Me. The handwriting was shaky, almost childlike. I looked closer beneath the scrawl in smaller print. It drips to remind. The ceiling is not dry. We are not gone. I Googled the name. Found an obituary. Lawrence Walter. Lived in this building. Died in 1981. Cause of death, drowning. Location, unspecified. Age, 33. There were 8 stains now. One in the kitchen, one above my bed, several clustering near the front door. All of them the same size, same pale gray tone. None of them wet. But when I closed my eyes, I could hear them dripping. Not in my ears, inside my head. Like they were waiting for me to understand. I looked into the mirror again, brushing my teeth. For a second, everything seemed normal. Then my reflection blinked out of sync. Once. Just a delay of half a second. But enough. Then it smiled. I didn't. The reflection leaned closer, mouth twitching. Then water began pouring from its eyes. Not tears. Steady streams. I blinked, and the image snapped back to normal. My shirt was bone dry, but the mirror had a handprint on the inside of the glass. Fingers long, upside down. I finally worked up the nerve to open the crawl space in the ceiling. Used a stepladder and a crowbar. Beneath the insulation and dust, I found a sealed hatch. Rusted bolts. Heavy wood. It opened with a groan. Inside, blackness, and an overwhelming smell of brine and rot. I lowered a flashlight into the gap. It flickered, buzzed, then revealed a wooden box, wrapped in oilskin, yellowed with time. I dragged it out, took it to the floor. Inside, a leather-bound journal, its cover warped with moisture. A lock of long, dark hair tied with string. And a photo, half-burnt. The photo showed this apartment, clearly my unit. And in the doorway, a man. Wet, eyes blank, ceiling above him dripping black water. And scratched into the bottom edge of the photo, "We live above the roof." The journal smells like mold and old blood. Even before I opened it, I could feel it breathing in my hands. Not literally, of course, but the leather was warm, greasy, as though it had been inside a body, not a box. I peeled it open anyway. I needed answers. What I got instead were confessions. The first few entries were dated 1979, written in a jagged, uneven hand. Sentences trailed off mid-thought. Paragraphs looped into incoherence before snapping back into clarity. The author was definitely Lawrence Walter, confirmed by the signature at the front, etched into the paper with what looked like a sewing needle. I've been hearing the dripping for 9 nights now, always from the same spot above my bed. No water, but the sound never stops. I keep dreaming of a lake. They're in the walls now. I hear them moving like sloshing water inside me. I saw someone crawling on the ceiling again. His head was on backwards. The final entry was dated May 17th, 1981. Tonight I go up to meet them. If you find this, it's because I didn't make it out. Don't look at the water. And whatever you do, don't listen to your reflection. After I finished reading, I sat back, stunned. The air felt thicker, hard to breathe, like being buried in a damp sleeping bag. Then I noticed something new. On the living room ceiling, just above where I found the journal, was a single, perfect handprint. It hadn't been there before. 5 fingers splayed. Long. Not painted or drawn. It was wet, but the ceiling was still dry to the touch. As I stared, the handprint twitched, just slightly, like it wanted to pull itself inside. I backed away and locked myself in the bathroom for over an hour. That night, I left the journal in the hallway and tried to sleep in the bedroom. It didn't work. At 12:11 a.m., the ceiling dripped again. The water sounds were slower now, more deliberate, like they were spelling something. I recorded it, played it back on loop. The rhythm formed 5 short drops, then a pause, then 3 slow ones, then 7 fast ones. It was Morse code. I spent the rest of the night translating. It spelled, "You've been here before." I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed of a lake. Still, black water stretching into nothingness. On its surface floated pieces of furniture, my furniture. Couch, fan, bookshelf, each drifting toward the center of the lake. And in the middle stood a figure with no skin, not bleeding, just stripped, raw muscle twitching in the dark. It held a lantern, and it said, "This time, you stay." I woke up choking on water. Except, I hadn't been drinking. My bed was dry. My clothes were dry. But my lungs felt flooded. I went to check on Gloria downstairs. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. Her door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Her apartment was flooded, but not with water, with mud. Thick, rotted earth from corner to corner. Every piece of furniture coated in filth. On the wall, smeared in the mud. Underneath. 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 I called the police. They arrived, searched the place, asked a lot of questions. No sign of Gloria. They said the apartment had been empty for 3 years. That night, I returned to the crawl space with a better flashlight and a mask over my mouth. The air was foul, sour, and rich, like a flooded basement after a long summer. I crawled in. The space wasn't empty. There were bones. Dozens of small, irregular pieces, finger bones, I think, all buried in layers of wet insulation. And at the far end, a trapdoor. It led into a space that shouldn't exist above the apartment, beyond the roof. The hallway inside was made of dripping wood and mirror shards. And in the mirror, I saw myself. But I was younger, wearing the same shirt from my high school graduation. He smiled and said, "You left me here." When I returned to my apartment, I noticed thin scratches across the living room floor. Deep grooves in the pattern of letters. Same as the stains. They formed one word. Remember. I started recording video this time, not just audio. Between 12:11 and 12:16 a.m., the footage glitched. When I scrubbed through frame by frame, one stood out. A single image, me, standing by the window. Except I was asleep in bed at the time. The other me had no eyes. Just sockets leaking water. I measured the hallway between the kitchen and my room. It was 11 feet long. The next morning, it measured 15. I checked again in the evening. 18. Each time I looked away and looked back, it grew. Now, when I walk from the kitchen to the bedroom, it takes several minutes. The ceiling drips all the while. And now the drips have voices. I don't even need the recorder anymore. Last night they whispered, "Stop pretending you didn't do it." I returned to the journal. On the final page, in faded ink barely visible under UV light, were new words. He watched them drown, then buried them, and forgot. I thought it was a metaphor, until I looked at my own name online. I found a court report from 1999, an old boating accident. 3 teenagers died. One survivor, Raymond Hollow. I don't remember it, but I was only 17. And now, it's coming back. I see their faces in the puddles, their hands on the ceiling, their voices in the water. I woke up standing in the hallway. I didn't fall asleep there. I went to bed. I remember brushing my teeth, turning out the light, getting into bed like normal. But I opened my eyes to the feel of cold wood under my feet, my body stiff and damp with sweat. My mouth was full of dirt. Just a pinch, a taste, like something had shoved it in my mouth as I slept. When I turned around, the hallway had no end. I walked until my legs hurt. Still, I didn't reach the kitchen or the bedroom. The walls were moving, not shifting or warping, breathing, like the building had lungs. And the air smelled like wet copper. Every corner of the apartment now drips. Not water, black liquid like ink or tar, thick and slow. It doesn't pool, doesn't stain. It disappears before it hits the floor, evaporates into nothing, but the sound never stops. Drip, drip, drip. Each room is in a different time now. The living room still looks like 2025, but the appliances are rusted. The wallpaper is yellowed and peeling. The clock reads 1983. When I opened the fridge, I found a cassette recorder inside, still playing. The voice on the tape was mine. You left them in the water. They begged. You didn't answer. That night, I saw a child's face in the bathroom mirror. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His hair floated as if underwater. I stared, frozen. Then the mirror cracked from the inside. When I looked down, my hands were wet. I hadn't touched water in over 12 hours. I rewatched old footage from my camera, frame by frame. In one segment, at the 12:11 a.m. mark, the child stands in the corner of my bedroom, watching me sleep. No sound, no movement, just eyes wide, dripping. The ceiling warped again. This time it didn't swell. It descended. By morning, it was 2 feet lower. I had to crouch just across the hallway. The dripping grew louder, more chaotic. Not rhythmic anymore, like something was thrashing above the drywall. I grabbed a broom and smashed at the ceiling in desperation. Dust fell like rain. Then something cried out, not in pain, in recognition. He's still here. He never left. He's part of it now. I returned to the journal again, desperate. I flipped past all the familiar pages, then beyond. At the very end, new ink. Fresh. Still tacky. But I hadn't written anything. And Lawrence was dead. Still, I built a room for them. The ones who drowned. The apartment remembers every death. And every coward. You aren't Ray anymore. You're the memory of Ray. What's left when guilt ferments. They're coming to take you home. The dream lake returned. But it wasn't a dream anymore. When I stepped through the bathroom doorway, I found myself waist deep in black water. The lights buzzed and failed, and I saw myself, standing at the far end of the hall, soaked, mouth open, eyes hollow. He walked into the kitchen, closed the door. When I opened it seconds later, he was gone. In his place was an old photo, stuck to the wall with a bloody thumbtack. It showed the hallway, same as it was now. Same water stains, same warped floor. But in the photo, for people floating in the air, all of them missing their eyes. I recognized them. 3 from a news report about the boating accident. And the 4th was me. I no longer sleep. When I close my eyes, the apartment speaks. Not in words, in memory. I feel hands pulling me through water. I hear the laughter of the other kids that day on the lake. I smell gasoline, hear the motor, and I remember. I jumped first. They begged me not to leave. I thought they were right behind me. I never checked. And now they're here. I woke up on the ceiling. Literally. My body stuck to it like a fly on glue. The floor was above me. Everything reversed. The ceiling had footprints. Familiar shoes. Mine. Dripping continued all around. But now it fell upward. I screamed. No one heard. The walls bled water. And then the voice returned. Louder than ever. You are the drip. You are the thing that leaks through memory. The water is not water. It's regret. I don't know how long I've been here. The sun doesn't rise anymore. The hallway now loops endlessly. I'll walk for hours and end up back at the same door. There's a mirror on the wall that wasn't there before. I stared into it for 2 hours. Finally, my reflection whispered, "We've always lived in the drip. That's where the drowned go." Then it reached out. The mirror cracked. And now, the mirror's gone. In its place, scrawled into the wall in something brown and wet. Apartment 6C never existed. The hallway loop finally snapped. I walked its length, counting every step, floor still above me, ceiling beneath, drip sliding upward into nothing. Step 247. A door appeared that doesn't belong to 6C. Rust red wood, iron handle cold as lake water, painted across it in flaking white. Back where you left US. I was already sobbing before I touched the knob, because I remembered exactly where I'd left them. Not boards, insulation, or roof space. A shoreline at midnight. Same lake as the newspaper photographs. Devil's Elbow Reservoir. The summer of 1999. I tasted gasoline in the wind. The water was flat black glass until the first drip fell from the invisible ceiling of night, sending widening rings that never reached shore. Standing knee-deep were the three who drowned. Jenna Kincaid, hair slicked across an eyeless face. Marcus Bell, chest split where the propeller hit. Tyler Mendoza, arms stretched upward, palms leaking silt. Behind them floated the upturned aluminium fishing boat, and my 17-year-old self clinging to its hull, refusing to dive again. He looked at me and shook his head. Coward. The word arrived on the crest of a drip, splashed against my eardrums, dissolved. I always told myself the Rangers had dragged me ashore unconscious. The lake says otherwise. The lake shows. I swam. I reached gravel. I saw the others flailing, and I ran for help. Too far, too slow, choosing breath over rescue until their voices were bubbles. I let the lake finish them. That is the drip, the single moment you deny until it leaks through every crack in time. The lake scene pops like a film frame catching fire. I'm back in the apartment, gravity restored, ceiling overhead where it belongs, but now it is raining inside, black droplets hammering like fists on cloth. Each drop that lands becomes a word scrolling across the walls. We saw you surface, we felt your heels on our chests now. It's your turn, T.O. Stay below the room's buckle outward. Plaster ballooning and is soft. Wet sacks that tear and spill hall water. Liquid, so cold my teeth crack. I sprint for the stairwell. There is no stairwell. The corridor ends in a mirror taller than any floor of the building. I touch the glass. Warm, pulsing with a heartbeat that matches the drip cadence. My reflection is Rayat 17 again, but his skin ripples like water. He leans so close our foreheads almost meet and whispers, "You were supposed to carry us across. You carried only yourself. Hold the ceiling. Be the ceiling." His hands pass through the glass, seize my shoulders. The surface turns to fluid resin, and he drags me forward. I drown on dry air. I wake on the other side. Here rooms stack like nesting dolls. 1. Upper crawl. Low beams clogged with seaweed that drips upward. Bones tied by leathery knots dangle like wind chimes. 2. Middle chamber. A classroom with desks half submerged. Children's drawings floating like lily pads. Every page shows a house raining ink. 3. Lower tank. Water to the ceiling, but I can breathe. The air is the water. At the far end, Lawrence Walter kneels on the wall. His throat is wire-stitched shut. A cassette recorder is fused into his sternum, tape spooling out like entrails. He presses play with one finger, and the ceiling above us becomes a screen of dripping words. The apartment never existed. We built it from his forgetting. Memory is architecture. Regret the roof. Water the only truth. Lawrence points to an exit hatch glowing sick blue. I drop through. Now the unit is on fire. Blue, silent flames curl across sofa, carpet, my own legs, nothing burns away. Everything simply fluoresces. In the center floats the leather journal, pages flapping like wings. The script rewrites itself in light. A flood that never happened is still a flood. A fire that does not burn is still a fire. A death unremembered is still a death. The ceiling finally gives. A single fissure spiders outward. The drywall peels like wet skin, exposing. Black water, suspended overhead, ocean deep, defying gravity just long enough for me to understand. The ceiling is the lake. All at once the lake falls. There is no impact. I am inside it, weightless, ceiling light rippling above, apartment walls drifting down like silt. The drowned three encircle me, mouths opening wider than jaws allow. Out of each mouth flows the drip voice in 3 layers. Jenna, name the moment. Marcus, name the sound. Tyler, name the ceiling. I answer with the only word that will close the loop. Sorry. The lake erupts in white blindness. I blink on cracked asphalt. No building. No smoke. Just an empty lot rimmed by police tape. Weeds pushing through concrete. A rust-speckled sign reads site of future condominiums. Coming 2010. My phone says July 17th, 1999. A Ranger truck idles nearby. 2 deputies lift a body bag onto a gurney. A medic asks if I'm the one who called. I taste mud, hear faint dripping though the morning is dry. The zipper opens, water sluices out. Inside the bag lies me, age 43. Eyes empty, mouth packed with lake dirt. Someone must hold the memory. If the carrier dies, the ceiling finds a new tenant, a new time, a new architecture of guilt. The building returns, room by room, when the clock strikes 12:11. Listen for the drip in a house that should be silent. Then look up. If the ceiling is dry, leave. If it is already wet, it is too late. The lake is above you, and it remembers every name. Enter the Ray Hollow Notebook.